Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. We have with us today our favorite coach. You can't say that. That's like having a favorite child. Our longstanding co-host, Caitlin. Welcome to the show.
Richard didn't mean that. Other SP coaches.
I know. The other coaches are like, how dare he? I'm just like stirring the pot. This is great.
Yeah, our favorite Coach's Corner co-host, because I'm the only one.
Well, I can't say that either because Danielle's been on here too, co-hosting.
True.
So yeah, no, I've just done a lot of damage. I've unraveled like
Just put
years
your foot
worth
in
of
your
positive
mouth.
culture within Shared Practices, fractured right now. So sorry.
Yep, Richard's going to go have some crucial conversations after this airs.
Get some nasty grams. So
Yeah.
no, Caitlin, you are one of the original coaches and my co-host on this show, and I'm not allowed to give comparative praise, but we're really glad you're here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited for the topic today.
This is like near and dear to my heart because this is my all day, every day, my entire life, which is this concept of analysis paralysis as a practice owner and feeling like there's always so much to do. There's always so much to do, both of like the stuff that's on fire right now in the practice, as well as the things that I just learned at these 4 courses, as well as the stuff I'm listening to on these podcasts and reading in this book. And then my buddy told me about this other system that if I do that, that's going to change everything out in my practice. And it becomes really, really hard to decide what the heck to even do and to stick with stuff even past the moment that it's exciting and implement the stuff that's actually really important to implement rather than going all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to talk a little bit about there's just so much information out there and so much advice out there. And the first step is to kind of filter through it and figure out what you want to take from it, because it's not all going to apply to your practice and your situation. But then once you've figured that out, not overanalyzing it so much to the point where we're not taking action on it. There is such thing, I think, as too much philosophy. So I think we should dig in.
Yeah. And we'll try and get really tactical on this episode as well and be less philosophy and more action. But I see it as 2 different things in one. One is deciding what to do, and number 2, managing our focus and our attention. And sometimes we don't know what to do, and therefore our focus is all over the place. And sometimes we know what we should do, but we don't want to, and therefore our focus is all over the place. So I'm just going to like talk about some stuff that's worked for me recently, if that's okay. And then we'll build on it and apply it to more people. So I have been a big fan of the book, Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's this whole project management system. I read it like 15 years ago when I was in undergrad. And there's like a way that you like keep track of your projects and you figure out the most powerful concept from that is like, you do a brain dump, you see all the things you're committed to, you clarify what does it actually look like for these things to be done, and then you figure out what is the next concrete action that needs to happen, like the smallest next step in this process. The problem is this book comes with this like very complex system of like keeping track of all your projects and tagging the next actions and like reviewing it on a weekly basis. And I do like none of those things. The only thing I'm good at is like writing down. I capture when I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do this thing. I have one spot that I put those projects that I'm going to circle back to. But even the system itself has been overwhelming for me. And so recently there's been 2 filters that I put on to everything. Number 1 is what is the thing that's stressing me out the most right now, that's causing me to procrastinate the most? So that thing I don't want to do, because the more I avoid doing that thing, the more I'm unhappy, and I'm even doing stuff that I want to be doing, but then I'm doing them and I'm a little bit miserable because I'm not doing the thing that's looming. So what's most stressful that if I handled, I would feel the best about? And that can be having a hard conversation with a team member or an employee or someone else, delivering bad news, or just stuff you don't like doing and you need to grind through. But then the other side of that is, what is the highest leverage thing? So what is the thing that if I do once now will solve not just today's problem, but a problem in the future, tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day? Those are the 2 filters now that I'm bringing to the projects that I work on a day-to-day basis. And then the last mindset is that like really all I can do is pick what am I going to do right now and what am I going to do after I'm done with that. So what do I do now? What am I going to do next? And everything else doesn't matter what else exists. I
Right.
can only do one thing at a time. And if I just figure out, okay, I'm doing this now, and then I'm going to do that next. And you just keep doing that throughout the day. What's the thing I need to get done right now that's either stressing me out or just needs to get done or it's high leverage? And what am I going to do next? If you get to the end of the day and you're like, well, I did that all day long, like that's a day well spent.
I think
That's like
if
my current system. So I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, so I think we take that and we just kind of apply it to the audience in the realm of dental practice management.
Yeah.
And we say, how do we know what to work on? What are that first thing and that second thing? And that's really where you look at it from your numbers, you look at your data. Is there anything glaring at you there that needs your attention, where if we just fix this one thing in the data, then we will move the needle? You look at your team. Do we need to hire someone? Do we need to fire someone? Are there bottlenecks there? You look at your facility. You look at your operations, right? We could keep going. All these, earlier this year, we kind of did the 3 pillars. You could go look at it from that framework, but identify your bottlenecks. And obviously, if you're working in coaching, that kind of helps you narrow it down. But I think that's so important is, to your point, what are the main things that are going to have the highest impact? And that's what I'm working on right now. And then maybe I have my list and I'll keep going after that. But staring at the list is just going to overwhelm you versus like choose the one, do it, and then we'll move on from there. And knowing what to do, either with the help of a coach or because you've consumed enough content at this point that you feel like you probably can apply it and look at your own, practice and go, okay, what's going to move the needle? That's so important because there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
You're going to these different courses, you're reading these books, you're listening to, you and I are contributing to this like information overload, right?
Yeah.
Of like, you're listening to our podcast, you're listening to other podcasts. That's all great. But if you try to apply all of it to your situation, it's not going to work because it's not tailored to you, and all the advice and all the CE and the systems in the world. Your practice maybe needs 3 or 4 of those things, not all 50 that you just heard about, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where, when you're looking at all the things we could do in our practice, if you just sat down with no perspective and you're just like, what do I think needs to happen next? And you're just in it. You're in the clinical day. You're in the chaos of like the team members and patients and stressors and stuff that's broken. You're like, well, the printer needs fixed. And like, I keep having to call the Wi-Fi company because the router goes down. There's all these little like things that need to get done. When you're just sitting there looking at it, like it's almost just hard to see it because it's all in your face. And if you go and sit with your whole team, you might get some more clarity of like, okay, what's the most broken around here that we need to fix? But when you start to add layers on top of it, even there, like it's still this mix of like what's hardest for me that this team member complains the most about this problem, so that's the problem we solve in the dental practice. Like that's not an objectively great way to make decisions on what to focus on. In some ways, for your sanity, that might just be, it's like the child who cries the most at home, and you're just like, you end up giving them more attention because they're constantly screaming for attention. Also, not the best way to parent, but a lot of times that's what happens. But if we can then step back and can we add a filter to this? So you talked about data. Can we look at the metrics to decide what does the data look like? And I'm not going to lie that like the first time I opened Practice by Numbers and looked at the metric software, you kind of still look at it and you're like, well, this didn't fix anything. I don't know what to focus on. There's like so many metrics in here. And that's where having someone that can help you interpret, okay, what are there all the numbers? What is broken here? What's broken enough that we want to fix it? Or what is the bottleneck that's going to prevent us from growing? So the metrics, if you have a good handle on metrics, they're going to inform your decision making. If you don't, they also might feel like noise. And there might be a learning curve to using metrics to make decisions. But then the other part of this is what we just said with a coach. This doesn't have to be a coach. It can be someone with perspective who's been further down the road. So I've had conversations with doctors in the last few days where they need to make a really difficult decision, like partner level. I opened an office that I shouldn't have, or I need to get out of this practice ownership situation. And that's like a very extreme high level version of this. But in their position, they can't see objectively from like a third party view what really needs to be done. They need to be able to talk this out with someone. And so that's where things like, our mastermind that we just launched with the Ask George mastermind, like being able to be in a room
Right.
with other people who they've got perspective because they've been there and they can help you look at things overall. Between metrics, coaching, and other people who've been there, that's a great place to go versus just random podcasts picking and choosing ideas. And at the end of the day, too, you sometimes you just have to make a decision and make the version 1 or version 2 of this system, of this protocol, of this thing that needs to get done. Like, there's a perfectionism that can lead to a lot of this.
Right.
Like, I need to find the perfect system and implement that in my office. If I hire
Yeah,
the
like I can't share my vision until it's ironclad and it's not going to change. Well, that's not going to happen.
right.
It's always going to change.
It's always going to change. And every system in your business that you put into place now, you're going to come tweak it and change it later. Sometimes you might tweak it a little bit because it was pretty good. Sometimes you might burn it to the ground and do something completely different. And so the speed to action of like, okay, this needs to get done. Let's make a decision. Let's act on it with the appropriate amount of information, and move forward. Like, that is the essential part of being an integrator, being an entrepreneur. Is at the end of the day, someone just has to call the shot and get something
Right.
done. And that is you as the dentist practice owner. And knowing yourself, am I the type of person who rushes into things too fast and doesn't do enough research? Or am I the type of person who overanalyzes and gets stuck in paralysis? And then getting support, hiring an office manager that helps balance
Right.
you out. That's where you can really start to filter these on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and that's where delegation matters, because if you can at least just muster up the courage to say, okay, Caitlin, go ahead and call that company, sign that contract, execute on that. It's done. It's out of your hands. You gave it the green light. Someone else is going to do it. And you may still be fearful, but it's already out there. The decision's been made.
Yeah, and I had that with an office expansion here in Indianapolis. Our Indiana Dentures and Implants office, we were trying to add some operatories. And this is where I learned that, like, I'm really not a great, I've known this, but I'm not a great project manager when it comes to things with a lot of little decisions. Like, a startup would probably kill me, because
Sure.
you have to just make all these little decisions and you can research each one of them ad nauseum. What color are the floors, and making decisions about the
Right.
walls and the outlets and all these things. And there's a real decision fatigue. And like, nothing happened with the expansion for like 4 months because it was on my plate. And eventually I gave it to my
Sure.
office manager. And I was like, we just need to get this done. Like, I trust you. Just make a decision, bring it back to me. I'll say, yes, that's great. Let's do it. And because right now I'm the bottleneck, and it's my ability to quickly make a decision and move forward that's preventing us from getting there. So you got to know yourself.
Yep, absolutely. I think another kind of easy way to add a filter is, if you are signing up for a CE course, let's say, try to bring a team member, especially if it's one that is more related to practice management. One of ours in particular, we're basically always talking about these kind of trajectory changing or analyzing situations. If you can bring an office manager with you to that, they will get just as excited as you, and then be eager to kind of take the action item list home and go, okay, we can only work on 2 to 3 things at a time. So what are our top things? And they can bring a new set of eyes for you. I think, speaking from the team member perspective, we've all had the experience of the doctor coming back from a CE and being super jazzed up about like 5 different things that they want to implement, and they're kind of spitballing it at the whole team, or maybe just leadership or whatever. And it's so exciting that we don't really filter down what are the first things we're starting with. And a lot of times it leads to just nowhere. You end up doing none of those things because the team wasn't there to really understand your excitement or hear that speaker explain why it matters. And then you're so overwhelmed with options and kind of overthinking it when you get home, and kind of reading the team's reaction, that you end up doing 0 out of the 5. And so setting that intention when you go to CE, and if you can bring someone with you, great, of, okay, I'm going to choose 2 to 3 things that are going to really move the needle in my practice from this course, you know.
Well, and that, what you just said, I think 2 things stick out to me, which is, number one, we underestimate how hard it is to like change things and how long it's going to take, and how much follow-up we're going to have. So there's this sense of like, oh, let's switch softwares, or let's switch credit card processors, or let's switch, this one's better, I heard about it from a friend. There's like this real cost to the team and the systems and the disruption of switching stuff. And it takes a while for people to kind of get past that. So if you're adding new software, switching new systems all the time, and then you like sputter out, you kind of peter out, you're going to lose trust really quickly. Your team is just going to be like, okay, they're never going to be excited about anything you ever want to change, because you just flip flop back and forth. And then number 2, we need to hold people accountable and follow up and implement and integrate. And 2 months later, we're still talking about this thing, so that it doesn't slide back into exactly how it used to be before. So underestimating how many things we can change at once, how much of a cost it is to change a system or add something to our practice, and underestimating how long it takes to really implement something. Lead doctors and practice owners to kind of break things and just fail to change and burn themselves and everyone else around them. So I don't know. What do you hear from that?
Yeah, I'm having a vision of like the kid who just is bored and takes it apart and puts it back together.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what your team can kind of start to envision you as, if you're spitballing too much without action. And you're absolutely right. Like you don't want that to become your reputation. Like it can feel very playful. But I can tell you firsthand, having been a team member for many years, it is playful, but you've got the team in the break room going, oh, she's back from this course. What do you think she's going to want to do? Like, how long do you think before we stop hearing about this or whatever, if that's kind of the vibe, it's not that funny, really. I mean, you want your team to go, oh, normally she'll, he or she will go to 1 or 2 courses a year and come back, and we've got a plan, and there's usually 1 or 2 things that we're all really responsible for executing on, and I'm excited to hear what they learned, when they were away. That's what you want, and you have to be careful, because if you come back and just spitball, it's team overwhelmed. Now you're overwhelmed and they're overwhelmed, and it's like, how much of this are we actually doing?
Yeah. Well, and I think you need to know who you can spitball with. So if you, and be really careful of not spitballing with multiple people and getting a bunch of feedback. And then people are like, well, I heard we're doing this. I heard we're doing this. Like it can turn into team drama if you're like workshopping with different team members. Of like, well, what do you think? Here's what we're thinking about. So like your office manager would be like, hey, I just want to enter brainstorm mode. I haven't decided on any of these, behind closed doors. Let's talk about this, what I'm thinking, and I want to hear your perspective. But come out of that with kind of more of a decision on why and what you're doing, or next steps to research it further and verify it, or talk to someone who's done that, and collect a little bit more data. And then once you're firm on this is what we're doing, you bring it to the team. I don't know. What else about this topic of, one thing we were talking about beforehand was like managing our own focus and attention, when it comes to like even our phones and like podcasts and all that. Something I've downloaded recently, it's an app called Opal. It's like a obnoxious subscription app. There's also a physical product that's very similar called Brick, that you tap your phone to this little device. And they do the same thing. You either set up times or you tap your phone to this little brick, and it locks certain apps in your phone until the time is over, or until you come back and tap it on this brick. And it's kind of glitchy. Like it crashes when you're trying to like put which apps are in there. And I've like had to figure out how to work with it. But it's been really, really impactful and powerful. And I've done things like social media just gets shut off after 8 p.m. Like Instagram, Facebook, email, all of that. I can't access any of it. It's just like, okay, we're going to bed, and I can't undo it. I can't unlock it. It's just like locked in on my phone. There's been a part of my brain that just kind of like goes quiet when I don't even have those on the menu. It's not even an option. And then in the morning, I don't unlock those things until like 7 a.m. when my morning routine is done, when I've exercised and all that kind of stuff. And so just having these like boundaries on when am I going to do this type of activity? When am I going to let my phone be a distraction rather than a tool? And then eliminating stuff in my life that it's like, okay, this is not serving me. This is not helping. That can be really huge. And I just heard a Alex Hormozy podcast where on the Diary of a CEO, where he talked about this exercise of carrying around a piece of paper and writing down what you actually did every 15 minutes of the entire day. He's like, it's not something you can do all the time, but you do that once and you'll realize so quickly things that you need to cut out and change and remove. You'll be very aware of your time. You'll be much more productive because those 15 minutes can like sneak by you real quick, and you lose here, and you've lost an hour and a half in your day doing really nothing.
I learned that concept from you during a recording years ago of just this idea that, so sometimes we're scrolling on social media and it is just fun, right? We're just watching YouTube videos or TikTok or Instagram, and there's nothing educational we're getting out of it. Those are the obvious ones where you do want to consider putting a screen time block on and things like that. The sneaky ones are where you feel like you're actually being productive because it's something educational. You're on LinkedIn. I think I saw LinkedIn actually has shorts now, like short reel.
Everyone's doing shorts and reels.
So, yep. So you've got your LinkedIn, you've got your podcasts, right? You and me right now as part of this quote problem that I'm kind of painting this picture. And it used to be that you'd just go to the one course or you'd just read that one book a year, and that's where you'd kind of let your focus go. But now there's information overload, it's news overload, it's podcast overload. There's so much to consume. And then you're even more overwhelmed with ideas. And so to your point, I think it's great if we have a cutoff time as well, it gives you time to digest maybe some of the more educational stuff you did consume, which that's great. But we get to a point where maybe we're a little bit bored at night, and we're going to take action now. Okay, what were those notes I took on that podcast? What was that article I read on LinkedIn? How am I going to actually apply this? Does this make sense for my business or my life? And now I'm going to take action, So just this idea I want to put out there of be careful that consuming this really educational content doesn't become a form of procrastination in and of itself.
100%. And I remember in undergrad, my version of that was reading studentdoctor.net, which was like these forums where people are trying to get into dental school. They're studying for the DAT. And that was like my productive procrastination. But I actually labeled it as such. It's like, I know I should be studying. I know I should be doing my homework. But at least I'm procrastinating with like a slightly good thing. That can creep into like a chronic habit that actually prevents you from getting stuff done that you really need to get done. And so I think you're absolutely right of being conscious of, am I even really doing, think about the last 5 podcast episodes you listened to. This is an anti-podcast advertisement right here. Did I do anything from any of those podcast episodes? Like, did I actually implement any of those? And it makes me think of George when he first started podcasting with me and came on as a partner. He was one that hated banter in podcasts, because he wasn't listening to it on his phone. He was at a computer and he had like his notes out. He was like taking notes. And so it's like when they were just talking about nothing, the fluff at the beginning, he's like, what are you guys doing? Like, let's go. Let's get to something specific here. But the intent was, I'm going to capture this information. I'm going to do something with it, rather than this edutainment of like, I feel good about myself because I learned something and I'm smart and I'm a better practice owner, even though
I love that.
I haven't done anything. Exactly. So just being conscious of that. I think putting a name on it and calling it for what it is like, okay, this is still procrastination and there's other crap I should probably do. Especially if this is like at home when your kids are around, or you should be connecting with your spouse, and you're still kind of like wrapped into the practice, but you're not actually doing anything. You're just scrolling dental Facebook groups or Instagram dental, stuff. Like you kind of feel like, oh, this is work, this is good, this is in relation to what I'm doing, but you're like neglecting the people around you for your dang phone.
Yeah, but I think the takeaways to be like, try to cut out the noise as much as possible. Figure out what is that thing that's going to move the needle in the practice if we're relating it back to management, and tap in your team and get started on it. Of course, do your studies, listen to those episodes, get on the Facebook groups, spitball with who you need to spitball with. But to your point, keep it condensed. There is such thing as too much analysis. There is such thing as too many opinions. So know who you're seeking that feedback from, and maybe cap it at 3 opinions or something like that. Maybe get that specific with yourself and then make a decision. And if you haven't made a decision and executed it's beginning of the year right now, we're 2 months in as we record this. To your point, the last 5 podcast episodes, the last 2 CE courses you went to, the last 3 leadership books you read, what have you executed and implemented from those? And if you still have a laundry list that you need to filter through, this is the podcast, turn us off,
right?
Go to your action item list and execute.
Well, and the good part about that is you can look back at those 5 episodes and the 2 CE courses and the 3 books, and you can say, okay, what's the one that I feel like that one is the one I actually need to go do, and go listen to that on repeat and put in the next steps and actually take action. So you've kind of given yourself, breadth. Now go deep on that one thing and actually do it. So this has been great. This has been the kind of like, if you don't step back and think about this and monitor this, your screen can take over. Your quote unquote education can prevent you from getting stuff done. And I think most importantly, it can steal your time from not just the people who need you at your practice, but the people around you at home and in your life otherwise. So this is our little PSA, public service announcement here for you folks.
We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, but I think we need to be martyrs here and say, you know what? Sometimes too much opinions on the podcast can lead to inaction. So don't let it happen to you.
Exactly. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much. Fingers crossed you didn't have a baby in these last 2 recordings. So sometime soon, we're very, very excited for you.
By the time this airs,
yes,
I will have a baby in my arms.
Which is amazing. So super excited. And we might have to do some episodes without you because you need some breaks from Coach's Corner. We can get Danielle. We can get other people on the show. But
all right, I love it. Send in your requests. As always, you can still email. We'll get back with you and help you get started with coaching or set up with our events. Caitlin at sharedpractices.com.